Cool.
Morning, everybody. Welcome to Daily Dose. This is a pre-record conversation with our friend Erica, who's joining us at a different time because 8:30 didn't work for her. So we're really thrilled to have you with us, Erica, for what I know will be a hard and important conversation.
Thank you.
So talk to us, Erica, a little bit about who's the addict or the alcoholic in your life.
Yeah, so the addict alcoholic in my life is my father, who passed away just about 2 years ago this September.
Yeah.
My dad, a little bit on his backstory is that he was a Vietnam veteran, and when I grew up, I had the understanding that he drank because of what happened to him as a vet and his trauma. And there's a lot of things with his upbringing that were, I think, affected by that too. Like his mother abandoned him, and he was kicked out of his house at a very young age, and then he was drafted when he was 19. So it's just all very stemmed from a very, very young time. So when I got older and I realized that, the complications that I had with my dad, or if the complications that he had were not because of the person that he was, it was because of his disease and his addiction. And I know that he tried to quit many times, but ultimately I think the grasp was too strong, and it lasted, when you're 19 and you're starting to drink, or 19 and you have a very traumatic experience and you drink for 50, 40 or 50 years of your life, that's a really hard habit to kick. And especially, I feel like when, in maybe like the 70s or 80s or even the 60s, there wasn't a stigma around drinking, nobody told them that it was bad for them. Nobody told them that it would kill them eventually. And ultimately, that's what my dad passed away from. Probably about 2 years before he died, he was having a pretty large number of health issues, and we didn't really know if it was cancer or if it was diabetes or if it was an intestinal issue or whatever it was. But he ultimately was diagnosed with a decompensating liver, aka cirrhosis.
Yeah.
And it basically, I think, in my opinion, when you have cirrhosis, it kind of deteriorates you from the inside out. Like your liver cannot heal itself or go back to normal, but if you quit drinking, it can maintain itself for whatever period of time, but you can never go back to what it was. It just stays the same or goes downhill. And unfortunately, my dad tried really hard, but the grasp was too strong, and he passed away from liver failure and also some complications with whatever he had, being in the hospital so much. So
yeah. Well, I'm really sorry, Erica.
Me too.
Thank you.
Crummy. It's really crummy. So how old was your dad when he died?
He was 70. And I think the strangest part about saying that he was 70 is that I see other people that are 70 and I'm like, holy cow, they don't look 70. They don't look like the way my dad was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
he, even just his physical appearance deteriorated really quick in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
It's shocking that alcohol can do that to you.
It's true. When I go back and see pictures of Maz now in those last couple of years before he got sober, I don't recognize him. I mean, he's a completely different physical human being than he was.
Yeah, it's actually shocked me when I started paying attention to him as well.
Yeah, you just kind of, I mean, I have pictures of him and I can see, even if I kind of don't remember what time, I know by the time when my dad got sick based on what he looked like in pictures. So yeah.
So Erica, on Facebook, you post periodically about him, often around the anniversary of his death or other milestone moments. And the posts are always incredibly sweet and loving. And there's all these great pictures of the two of you together. And I'm curious to know how you reconcile the positive relationship you very clearly had with him with the challenges that addiction brings, because addiction makes people, from my experience of one, addiction made Maz such a totally different, disengaged person. So how do you reconcile that in your own life?
I think the biggest part for me with my dad being alive and not being alive is that I had to constantly remember that this was a disease that was talking to me. It wasn't my dad. And that also, as much as you really want to help people, we as humans can be very addicted to helping people and ourselves. It's a really hard habit to pass up, because in my mind, when I was younger, I was like, why wouldn't my dad want to get better for my family? Why wouldn't he want to live the rest of his life feeling better and not feeling like crap all the time? Why wouldn't he do that? And I realized that he was so far into his addiction that he didn't really have control over that choice.
Mhm.
So that's kind of where I've learned to make myself feel better and not take it so personally, I guess, and reconcile and remember the good times about my dad. And, because when he got his diagnosis, he was definitely, he was definitely scared. And I could tell he tried to quit. And when he cut back, he was definitely communicating a lot more and communicating with my mother more and just remembering more things. And
Mhm.
it was almost like getting to know a completely different person in a
Yeah.
way. You know what I mean?
Yep, I do.
Yeah. So then, kind of when my dad died, I was like, well, this version that I had of my dad that I grew up knowing was really gone a long time ago,
Yeah,
when he tried to quit. So,
yeah.
yeah.
So, um, you know, I'm so fascinated by the disease of alcoholism because I know that there is a genetic tendency
Yeah.
towards it, but I also think that so much of who we are is based on what we observed in our household.
Yes.
So if you grow up not eating meat, for instance,
Mhm.
you probably don't eat a lot of meat when you're older because your
Yeah.
experience was to not eat meat. So I wonder how you think about how you navigate alcohol for yourself,
Hmm.
having had that lived experience, and then also the genetic piece to it.
Yeah. Actually, I think genetics with addiction is very real. We do have in our bloodline, I think we've had family members that have struggled with addiction in different capacities, whether it's gambling or drugs. And I just, when you talk about like growing up and seeing it in your household, I remember my dad coming home from work every single day, making a whiskey seven and sitting in the exact same spot watching TV every single day. And that's just a pattern that you get used to and a pattern that you know exactly what he's going to be doing at all times. And for me, I think I'm now, and being in my 30s, I'm still navigating what alcohol means for me because I'm not sober. But I certainly understand that alcohol has a really negative effect on me. Like I'm actually, I'm obviously at that age where if I have a couple too many glasses of wine, it's going to take me out for 2 days. But it's really hard because I also work at a restaurant. I serve people booze.
Mhm.
And I also think there's something really fun and creative about the service industry as well. And there's something really cool about the craft of wine and the craft of making spirits. So I think it's a really hard balance. And for me, alcohol has always been a social activity.
Mhm.
And I think that's where it will always remain. I love happy hour. I'm a happy
Mhm.
hour person. And but like just the activity of like getting drunk and getting as messed up as possible is not really there for me in my life anymore.
Yeah.
So, and that's been a hard balance, especially when you grow up in a binge drinking town and you have
Yep.
all of those activities surrounded by you. It's fun to do that for a certain part of your 20s or whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you said that your dad would always come home and make himself his first drink. Were there times when he would like be sort of even keeled? He'll have a one, maybe have one after dinner, and that would be it. And were there other times where he'd actually you'd notice him drinking more, or was it a constant thing?
I don't think I ever saw him drink just one, especially after work. And then it got to a point too where as I was older and living on my own that I knew that I couldn't call my dad for help or I knew he wasn't going to be able to drive after a certain time of day.
Yeah.
Um, but I remember when my dad was in the hospital and being evaluated, my older sister heard him say, when the doctor asked him like, how many drinks do you think you have in a day? And sometimes he would say, up to 5. And when you think about that as 5 nights a week or 7 nights a week, that's a lot of drinks in one week. It's an
Yeah.
incredible amount. So
It's sort of shocking to me. I'm fascinated to hear that he was honest
Yeah, it's more than I
because
was.
in Maz's case,
well,
Maz
I
always
think
said,
he
"Oh, I
was.
have fun."
there
Yeah.
was there still was toward the end a lot of lying.
Sure.
And I think that was the hard part is I distinctly remember going to an appointment where, and you can't lie to doctors about that stuff, especially when they're tracking your liver enzymes and things like
Yeah.
that. And they're, at one point they were trying to discuss a liver transplant for him, but you have to go 6 months without drinking.
Yep.
And we all knew that he wasn't doing that, unfortunately. And I watched him lie to the doctor and say that he wasn't. And, you know, I could see his face get really red, and he was kind of looking down and very squeamish. And, you know, unfortunately, and it's just, then I'm just like, I know that my dad himself isn't just a liar. It's just his disease making him do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
It's really hard, isn't it? It's really hard to remember that what they're doing and saying is them. I mean, it is them, but it's a version of them that is so not who they want
Yeah.
to be.
And it's interesting to me, it happens to everyone. Every person I've met since I've been going to AA has said the same thing. If we're lucky enough to be sober and looking back, we all admit how shameful it was for the amount of lies that we did. And when we talked to each other, it was the same lie. We always lied exactly the same, the exact same stupid reasoning behind saying the same stupid thing that you think would get you out of trouble.
Yeah. And like hiding bottles from your family, I was like, I don't want to have to like be finding hidden things from my grown dad.
Yeah.
You know?
What, this is a stupid question, kind of, but what do you miss most about him, Erica?
My dad and I were very similar in personalities, so I just miss his spontaneous things. He was very nostalgic and really fun to be around. He was a huge bullshitter, so you never really knew if he was kind of like, I don't know, like messing with you or not. And he just had a really like fun way of looking at life, even though I knew that he had a lot of inner demons.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was a fun person to be around.
You can tell from the pictures.
Yeah.
I mean,
and he
it's
loved
very
food.
clear.
So like I have a lot of food memories with my dad. So I love to cook too. And we just, yeah, I grew up being a daddy's girl. So
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know as a young child that he was an alcoholic?
I think that's hard to say because I think I didn't really understand what alcoholism meant when I was a kid. And I think when I say that I don't understand what it meant, I didn't really understand the effect that it was having, you know, on people.
Yeah.
Because I knew that my parents had a pretty rough time in their marriage that was affected by alcohol, but I just thought they were fighting, you know. I didn't know any better. And then I got older and realized, you know, being in even relationships myself with alcoholics, that those are very real feelings and very real things that take down relationships. And if you don't have the patience to stick by somebody when they get better, or to have the guts to walk away, it's really, really hard.
Yes,
you know, and that's just something that, like, I knew what alcohol was, and I knew that alcohol could be really bad and hurt people, but it's more or less just the overall scope of what it does to people is what I didn't understand.
Yeah, I think, again, my experience is so limited, but I think we all think that somebody else is going to be the person who dies of alcoholism. I mean, when Maz woke up and was kind of back in his right mind after having been in a medically induced coma, I remember the doctor saying to him, listen to me, if you go back to drinking, just walk straight to the funeral home of your choice and pick your casket, because you will drink yourself to death. And I remember thinking, no. And then him and Maz sort of not responding, and the doctor saying, let me be very clear, you know. And it was a moment for both of us, I think, where we thought, oh, like we're at that point.
Right. And I think that I wish that, I think my dad was really delusional, because he was always like, no, it's not my liver. No, it's not my liver. It's probably like, it might be leukemia. We don't know. Or it might be this. I might have polyps on my colon. We don't know. It's just all this stuff. He was very delusional in that sense, because he didn't think that it was going to be from that. And that's the addict speaking too. You know, and no one thinks that it's going to happen to them, especially, you know, even at a young age, even you're in your 20s and 30s, it's really funny to binge drink and do all that stuff. But when you don't know when to stop, you know, who's teaching you how to stop? No one went in and told my dad that at a younger age that it was going to get bad.
Yeah. Yep. So Erica, what do you say to other people who've lost their parents? Or, I mean, you've been so open about this that I know you must have been a resource for people. How do you manage that in your own life? Because there's the intellectual side of you that wants to be helpful and be
Yeah.
of service to other people, but you lost your dad.
Yeah.
And that can't be discounted.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing too is that that I've learned that not to just say I'm sorry, because I'm not sorry, like saying someone telling me like I'm sorry doesn't always help.
Yeah.
It's just, like I'm thinking of you, I'm here if you need me. I understand what that loss was like, but also my loss was totally different. I was very grateful that I got to say goodbye to my dad and I got to spend the time, like I knew that that's what my dad was going to die of from a long time ago.
Yeah.
So, and I know that some people lose their parents very, very suddenly. And I don't know what that's like, but I can tell you what it's like to move on without them. And that's something that I'm still navigating as well.
Yeah.
But also I think in the sense that I'm still also figuring out the advice to give to people with addicts, because again, I think the biggest thing that helped me was you can't really help people that don't want to be helped,
Yeah.
because it does push people away. But at the same time, that's a really, really hard balance to find for me, because you don't want to feel like you're just watching them die. I do have a friend right now that's struggling with a friend that has a friend struggling with drugs, and she wants to be there and help, but she also just can't really like let that person into her life, because it's really dangerous and it's
Yeah.
really hard to keep that person around, but you kind of have to just love them from a distance for a while. And I think unfortunately, like, addiction is a really grasping disease, but at the end of the day, it also comes with choice too. So
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Very few people had the first drink shoved down their throat.
yes.
I
Yep.
mean, it doesn't start out as a disease. It evolves into one for some people and
Right.
not everybody. I mean, we try to be really clear that A, we don't spend any time diagnosing other people, and B, the great majority of people can drink and are just fine.
Yeah. And it's really, really hard to dictate that. That's why it's not, my business or anybody else's business to tell somebody like you need to go get help. Like but you can obviously voice your concerns without saying that,
Right. Yeah.
So.
Well, Erica, I think you're really generous to share your story, because I think, let me ask you this. Did you or do you have any feelings of shame around this? Shame of being the child of someone who ended his life this way, or have you worked through that and been able to let all that go, or did you never experience it maybe?
I wouldn't say shame, just because I know that the issues were so deep rooted beyond even when I was a thought in somebody's mind, and that's a different story with trauma in itself and healing trauma. Like I myself am, like losing my dad was a traumatic experience, but now I have to unpack that so I don't carry that into my family in the future, or whatever it is, or my future children or whatever. And I think that that's a mental health stigma that nobody in the 60s or 70s really had, where they're like, yeah, everybody came back from Vietnam and they're just entirely different people, and nobody unpacked that. He went to therapy, but I think he was, through the VA hospital, but I think he was long gone in his addiction before that. So I think it's not shame, but also I think it's with I don't know if like guilt even is the right word too, but I do struggle with, again, finding my personal relationship with alcohol, just because of how my dad died too, because it's hard, like I don't think I have a drinking problem or anything like that, but I also really like a glass of wine after work too. But I don't want to have to sit here and feel guilty because it killed my dad.
Isn't that so interesting? Because I feel that way too. And I obviously don't have the genetic struggle that you might, but I think about it too. I'm not the alcoholic. I don't have to give up drinking if I want to drink, but I also am just so much more conscious of it.
Yeah, I definitely am hyper aware as well.
Yeah. I mean, your dad did not set out to become an addict. Maz didn't set out to become an addict. So if people don't set out for that, then it means that it comes up on them unawares, which could then happen to any of us.
Yeah.
Right. And it can show itself in obviously different forms. That's not just alcohol too. So.
Right. Wow. Well, we really appreciate you coming on.
I really do. I love the fact that you could share that story with us. I appreciate it.
You guys are doing something really good. And it helps me to talk to people with like-minded issues. And I think I said this to you in my initial message, that when I started talking about it, I'm just shocked by how many people not just have somebody in their life that's an alcoholic, but that have actually had somebody that they know that's died.
Yeah.
It's incredible. For me, even though I understood that alcoholism was a huge problem and that almost everybody has been touched by it somewhere in their life, something weird happens when you're living with it, where you start to think, well, nobody will understand this. I'm the only person going through this, so I have to just hold it all to myself by myself. And when we came out with it, the same thing. I just thought, wait a minute, where were all these people? And they were doing exactly what I was doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's that aspect that's crazy. And then it's crazy that like at age 21, you can legally just go buy this thing.
The night before, totally illegal. The next night,
Yeah.
drink until you literally black
Yeah.
out. It makes
Yeah,
no sense.
it makes no sense. And then there's, you know, other things that are healing that are illegal. So it's like, where's that balance?
Are we discussing marijuana, Erica? Because I would agree.
That's my stance on that. Is I think it's really messed up that my dad died from a drug that's, you know, that's legal when you're
Infinitely
21.
more dangerous.
And then
Yes.
doctors can prescribe an illegal drug to people to make them feel better. So
I agree with you completely. And I have no interest in smoking or eating marijuana, but it should 100% be legal.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah.
I mean, it's much less dangerous than alcohol.
yeah,
It's so weird that we just said, well, alcohol's highly, highly troubling, but we definitely have to just keep that going. This doesn't make any sense at all.
and one of the things that also didn't under this is a medical thing that I might mess up a little with wording, but I think alcohol is one of the only drugs that when you completely withdraw from it after a certain amount of time, the backlash of it can physically kill you.
Yes.
Because my dad had never struggled with heart issues until, you know, like he literally told my family, like, I'm trying to quit and I'm cutting back, but I feel worse,
Yeah.
you know? So like and that's scary. That's really terrifying.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Erica, we won't keep you any longer, but thanks so much for coming on and for reaching out and wanting to share your story, because it's got a lot of value, and your I just really applaud where you are in your own journey.
Thank you very much.
It is absolutely an unpacking. Trauma is trauma is trauma, and we all have to deal with it and try not to carry it forward. So good for you for doing that. You and your future generations will benefit from the work you're doing now.
And thank you guys for continuously sharing your story too.
Thanks, Erica. We'll see you at the restaurant soon.
Take care.
See ya.
Bye.
Everybody else, we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.